done
Recording
well
in
actually on
progress.
human resource. But however, with people with disability is still zero. And I think 0%. I think perhaps moving forward, we will see that 2% that you are envisaging of having on people with a disability, you will be able to fill them in. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Mavilati. Honorable Mai.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, I must just say that at some point I got cut off for I don't know what happened there. I think it's system issues. So I missed some of the opening comments of the Ms. Yanga there. And I tried offline to get her presentation, but I did not succeed. But be that as it may, parts of what I caught on her presentation, I thought she said something about 80% of the recommendations were 80% of her recommendations were being implemented, so to speak. But then the CEO said something about 99%. Maybe I got my wires crossed. Can I just be clarified? Maybe I missed the thing wrong with all the cutting of the feed here. So can I just get clarity on which is which actually? Or maybe did I understand things incorrectly? And then also, Chairperson, I'm just nervous about the rejection rate. I think it's just too high, this rejection rate. And also when I then looked at the PR, the substance of the PR tends to focus on what auto does, on what the Office of the Tax Ombudsman does. And by the time you get there, before you get there, you need to have exhausted the SARS processes. And people only get to know this when they report to the auto. That's why it's such a high rejection rate, in my view. Now, the question is, one, shouldn't the auto PR, now that we've got a well-wired machinery to do PR, shouldn't the PR also include advising people to first exhaust these SARS processes, just to reduce the rejection rate, so that whoever comes to you would have at least ticked all the boxes of SARS, as opposed to have this pointed out to you when they're already frustrated. But having said that, in preparation for this meeting, I spoke to some of the entrepreneurs and I said to them, I'll be talking to the Ombudsman today. What are some of the generic issues, no specific issue of your own problem, but what are the generic issues? And these are the generic issues that I think I must use this platform to raise with yourselves, to say, is it possible? Because what you want as little as possible coming to you. And that's why I think in the past, this office had so few people, because the growth of this office is bad news, actually. It's not something to be celebrated. I think it just means that SARS is doing something wrong. So we should not be celebrating the growth of this office. This office should actually not even exist if SARS was doing what, in my view, should be doing. Because the SARS has got a lot of its own problem resolution matters. But if SARS can't resolve, and then people come to you, and you don't even have a binding recommendation on SARS, I think it's a problem. So before, in fact, I raise some of the issues, one of the questions I want to ask you, the auto, is why do you find, are you comfortable yourselves with the fact that your recommendations are not binding? This is the understanding that most people had with the public protector for a while, up until it went to the Constitutional Court, this very issue, and the Constitutional Court ruled that it must be binding. Do you think there's no parallel there, that your recommendations should be binding? I mean, I agree with, for instance, the submission by Honorable George, that you really should be truly independent. When people come to you, trust me, this is a life and death issue. And therefore, people don't just come to you because they're bored. But if they come to you, but you still can be overruled, I mean, what's the point? So I would honestly be recommending that you should investigate why your office hasn't got binding recommendations, as it were. But here are the problems, for instance, systemic issues that are within SARS that entrepreneurs raise, which I want to ask you very kindly. Can you please look into these matters so that there's no reason to come to you, so to speak, because the lesser people come to you, then it means SARS is doing what you should be doing. One is the issue of what they call they say if you raise a dispute with SARS for anything that you feel is incorrect, there's what SARS has designated as an 80-day business day period. So you're going to have 80 days to deal with SARS. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs, 80 days is a killer. By the time 80 days has come and gone, you arguing with SARS, your business might have shut down by that time. And if your dispute is related to a VAT refund, you get no money paid to you until the matter is resolved. And this could take up to 3 months, or 1 month is 1 month too much for the entrepreneurs. But for 3 months for SARS is a killer. What is it that the tax ombuds can do to deal with that dispute time? I think 80 days is too much. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 questions, but the blanket approach of 80 days, whether it's 1 or 2 issues, whether it's 100 issues, I don't think it's making sense. If it's 80 days for 100 questions, maybe 100 queries by that entrepreneur, maybe. But if it's 2 or 3 or 5 issues, why is it also going on to the 80-day basket? So I think there's something not right about the 80 days, as it were. So that's the one thing that entrepreneurs are raising. That period is just too much, number one. Number two, some of the complaints are around the what they call CMO, Complaints Management Office. I'm told there by entrepreneurs that they used to be, ordinarily you have a toll-free number to call SARS. And SARS and SARS has been doing this for some time. This has been helpful, although the waiting period was too long, but it was a helpful process. The entrepreneurs are telling me now that that facility is no longer available now. SARS does no longer offer the service anymore, meaning that if you don't have airtime, you will not be able to lodge your complaint or follow up any existing. So the toll-free complaint, what aligned to SARS, is no longer there. This is what they're telling me. I'm not in that space myself, but this is what people are telling me. So can I ask you to please look into this matter and verify and just check if there's anything you can do to resuscitate that, because they say whilst that system was in place, it was working as it were. Lastly, the entrepreneurs are also complaining that if a VAT return is assessed, why are the audit notes not immediately made available to the taxpayer for viewing? Apparently, there's another bureaucracy that is also introduced, that if you need that done, then you must put for request for reasons. And that process is also has got another month type waiting period. You know, there's all this bureaucracy and all of that. And I thought the introduction of all these structures and everything is meant to make things easy. But why are we piling bureaucracy after bureaucracy? If you are going to assess a particular entrepreneur's VAT return and you decide that there's a due by that entrepreneur, surely at the time you're saying that it should not be too much for you as SARS to give the reasons why you arrived at this, so that you can kill the discussion before it even starts. But if an entrepreneur is unhappy, the first thing is that they must have within 21 days lodge for request for reasons. I mean, why this unnecessary bureaucracy? As it was. So I think that for tax ombudsmen to do what you need to do, I really think that you must make it your business to check the processes of SARS, vet them, make sure that those processes are really smooth processes, because right now I'm not getting the sense that SARS has got SARS is a very efficient organization, don't make a mistake, but I'm not getting the sense that it is customer centric. I'm not getting the sense with the information I get. I'm not getting an entrepreneur centric and a community centric. I'm getting a SARS centric perception, and I should be getting a people centric perception that SARS is standing for the people, is trying to help the people, and all of that. Now, if you are an ombudsman, I would assume then, therefore, that you are like the public protector. You are there for the weak, as it were. So, what is it that you're going to do to clean up these things? Lastly, I'm not getting the sense that in your mandate you do anything proactive. Maybe you do, but you didn't mention it in your presentation. If that is the case, please clarify. What is it that do you not do things on a proactive manner? Must people first complain before the tax ombudsman comes in, or you can try to preempt these complaints by just making sure that in your own in-local inspections you get SARS to do what SARS should do, so that people don't have to leave SARS processes and come to you, as it were. Yeah, I think for now, Chairperson, those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Mara, what refer to younger ombudsman? There's no longer ombudsman.
No, I think the man there
is a man or you say a woman in young.
I think the man is not gender. It's just like chairman. Chairman, the man in the chairman is not gender. It's for management. So even ombudsman, it's not meant for gender. That man there is for the role. Manage.
Right, Honorable Abraham.
Yes, Chair, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Once more, congratulations to the new ombudsperson. And the presentations are much appreciated, and they've come alive to us indeed, because we see that the person speaking looks like this. Wow, what an improvement from what Yanga used to do at Treasury. Thank you so much for that kind of leadership, Yanga. And thanks to the OTO for that transformation of a person. Chair, my first question really is on awareness creation by the office for the general public. Now, we want to get a sense as to what is it that the ombudsman can deliver for the vendors on the street. I know that in terms of the communities, in terms of what they have presented to us, I was delighted to see the number of community radios that the office has been in touch with. I'm really, really impressed. But I don't know why, for example, you don't have such radio stations as Umhlobo Wenene and Ukhozi FM, because those two are those that are really used by ordinary people on the street when they are frustrated by the processes at SARS. They have to have a way of being able to appeal for the kind of consequences that they experience at that level. So for me, I would like to just get to know how much awareness is created down there over and above what I see is quite commendable. I must say. Sorry. The next thing that they're stating, Chair, is the issue of systemic difficulty. And I think there's an issue on their recommendations being not met, but there's improvement in what SARS is now doing. Sorry. Whether there is an effort towards improving the systemic difficulties that are there. Lastly, Chair, can they also talk to the issue as that it's standing at 30.77%? My first question is, what are the recruitment delays? And secondly, what is the impact of such a vacancy rate in the institution itself? Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair.
Enkosi. Honorable Surpan.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. My apologies for the video. I live in an area with very poor reception. Chair, I would just like to ask, noting in the presentation that 80% of the complaints have been resolved in favor of the taxpayer, and that most of the reasons why complaints are dismissed is because individuals have not completed the exhausting of the SARS processes, that we know that SARS takes an attitude that you should pay now and ask questions later, and it's become a very, very big issue in the country for many, many taxpayers, both entrepreneurs, individual taxpayers, businesses, and so on. And that SARS seems to place its revenue pressures ahead of its service mandate as well. And as been described in the presentation and articulated very clearly, it is very difficult for individuals to even seem to get appointments with SARS to sort out trivial matters, let alone big ones, such as registration or verifying their identity or those sorts of things. It really is a problem on the service side of SARS. I would like to understand what remedial actions have been prescribed to SARS on this sort of terrible attitude towards taxpayers and citizens, which has the effect of eroding trust between taxpayers and governments. And then, Chair, my second question is the Ombud of the view that SARS' approach is in violation of the constitutional requirements that all government administrative processes should be just and fair? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honorable Sarpen. I think we are done with questions. Over to you, Ombuds and OTO and the entire team.
Thank you, Chair. I will answer some of the questions, but because some of the questions deal with speciality of which the senior managers are here, for example, questions regarding systemic reviews and questions regarding complaints and CMO, it's Talita and Gert, and questions regarding HR issues is Mamlayo, and questions regarding stakeholder engagement, it's Pearl. However, I'm gonna talk to those issues about the office that affect that impact on the independence. The first question is from Dr. George regarding the need for the office to be independent and what process have been made regarding independence. I must say I have been very fortunate that when the issue regarding independence of the office started, because when the office started, I was already at Treasury. When the issue regarding independence of the office started, I was at Treasury. And we know that Honorable Judge Ngwebe was very strong on that issue. However, everyone at Treasury, even the Minister of Finance, in his budget of 2020, noted the issue regarding the structural independence of the Office of the Tax Ombudsman, because there's also the perception and the optics from the taxpayers if we are not independent. However, due to the cost containment measures, and when we did the calculation, because there was a study that was done by Treasury GTEC, when we did the cost calculation of the office being independent, the costs were like 100 and something million for the office. So the question that was asked is that, yes, the independence is the cornerstone upon which the office of any ombudsman is built, so that taxpayers can have trust on us. However, an issue is what costs. So, Honorable George, we are looking at that. We have had meetings with Treasury again when I'm here, and we have had meetings also with the RCBs, whereby we were open to them regarding these costs, and we requested that we have discussions regarding the effective cost measures so as to make the office structurally independent. So the issue is the costs. Regarding your second question, that South African taxpayers are highly taxed but not getting the service. Unfortunately, when taxpayers come to us, that is outside our mandate, so they won't even raise that issue, the fact that the government is not spending money correctly. That is more of a policy issue. And our mandate, as I said, that there is limitation on our mandate, is that we deal with service matter and administrative matters arising from the application of the Tax Act. The fact that the government is not spending money adequately does not rise from the application of the Tax Act. That is more Treasury issue. And the other question I'm going to give over to my colleagues to come after me. The issue regarding the face-to-face digital across, we are doing those digital and face-to-face interaction. On the 24th of August, Pearl is gonna talk on this. We went to the Four Ways Mall and we did had an advert on radio. I understand Honorable Abraham talk about Ukhozi and Umhlobo Wenene. Also, when I arrived here, I asked the question, but the issue was that the SABC cost of advertising are way too expensive than other medias. So you'll find out that it is difficult because if the costs are a lot, there is no budget for that. But what we are trying to do this year, Pearl will elaborate on that, is that we are trying to find a few slots on Ukhozi FM so that we can use the money, even if they give us 5 slots, because they are way too expensive, so that we can be able to have a footprint or appearance on Ukhozi FM, so as to catch the majority of the public. And the next one from Honorable Mani, regarding the opening comments, my notes were handwritten, but I was saying to Alan that the slides are there because I was guided by the slides. So, and also the recording. So if maybe Alan can provide you with that. You talked about 98% recommendation and 80%. What we are saying, 98% of our recommendations of the complaints to SARS were implemented by SARS. So 98% of the recommendations were implemented by SARS. 80% of those complaints are in favor of the taxpayer and 20% are in favor of SARS. So the reason why we have that, we want to show that even if our recommendations are not binding, but so far, the relationship that we have with SARS results in 98% implementation rate. Okay, Gert, I'm gonna give it to you after I've done all the bigger ones. And then another one that Honorable Mani raised was the issue of, are we comfortable with the fact that our recommendations are not binding? The nice thing about being in the office is a work in progress. It is an issue that the recommendations are not binding. We cannot not be comfortable about that. But as I've said on the beginning of my presentation, that what gives us a level of comfort is that so far, even if our recommendations are not binding, SARS implements 98% of the recommendations. Therefore, that limits the fact that the recommendations are not binding. So that limits that issue. And secondly, as I've said, 80% of those are in favor of taxpayer. And Honorable Mani raised the issue that our mandate is not proactive. I wish to state that in 2017, when I was still at Treasury, Judge Ngwepe came with that, And then the legislation was changed so that the Office of the Tax Ombudsman can conduct its own systemic reviews. That is our mandate. We are proactive on the systemic reviews. But once we want to do that investigation, we need to have an approval from the Minister of Finance. And coming to the last one, pay now, argue later. Honorable Asho, there is a court case, the Metcash case, which gave judgment on the issue of SARS pay now, argue later. So if there is a court judgment that is in favor of SARS in this issue, I don't think we can come here and say that SARS is wrong because the court, the judiciary is independent. So there is a Metcash judgment regarding the pay now, argue later. Now I'll hand over to the CEO to say some few remarks or respond. Gert, Talita, Pearl, and Mamlayo. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Puta, on the that elaborate discussion. I think that a couple of things come out of the questions that came out. I mean, Honorable Mabile spoke about where do we exhibit our services, seeking to see whether we actually reach out to the people that we should reach out to. We have, we need to strike a balance between, we need to be able to reach out to the people that need our services. And to that extent, we felt like we would select, as Ms. Mputa said, malls where taxpayers are able to approach us. We have done some exhibitions at the Four Ways Mall and a few other malls, and we continue to do that. We are looking at expanding that and going to malls in townships, malls in where most of our people will be. But we do that fully cognizant of the fact that we need to see which people really need our services, and also with the issue of reaching out to communities. We do reach out to communities. The bulk of what we do, the bulk of our PR value comes from community radio stations, like, for example, the likes of Tobela FM. We have been on those radio stations quite a lot, and I think that Pearl is good to highlight the issue on that. The issue of Honorable Mani spoke about the rejections being too high. Personally, that concerns me, and professionally as well, Honorable Member. And I assure you that in our outreach programs, it is one of those things that we talk about quite a lot, and we emphasize that. We, in the outreach programs or in the presentations that we do at different fora, including with RCBs, we emphasize that. And I emphasize it. The last time I spoke about it was at the Tax Indaba, which is probably the biggest tax event in the country, where I indicated that it's disappointing that half of the rejections, we would be rejecting complaints that are brought by tax practitioners that we believe should know exactly how the law works. But some of them just don't give themselves time to understand exactly what needs to be done, and they throw the issues at us when they are unable to resolve them with SARS without following the processes. I want us to, one of the things that we want to do is to monitor whether we are making any progress, whether the numbers are going down on that point, just so that we could make sure that we don't have these high number of rejections. Your point is very well made, that by the time the matter comes to us, it would have been, the taxpayer would have been gone through the processes with the SARS, and they would be majorly disgruntled. I think those are the additions that I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jay. May I continue?
Yes, Gert, you can continue.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chair. I want to address a couple of things, and some of them have been touched by the Tax Ombudsman as well. But I think I can start with the proactivity to just add on to what she said and just give a brief explanation on how exactly we deal with the systemic issues. So first of all, we can identify systemic issues from the complaints that we receive. So in those cases, yes, we do require formal complaints before we can actually look into it. We do trend analyses, we look at those complaints, and we look at emerging issues as well to identify if there's anything that's causing or creating new trends in complaints. In those cases, we do not need ministerial approval and we can just raise the systemic issues. The second one is where the proactivity comes in. For instance, with the issues that the Honorable Manye has raised, that he received from entrepreneurs, in engagements like this and forums like this, those are the kind of things that we can take. We can take the information and we can request ministerial approval to look into it to see if there's any systemic issues involved there. But I will address some of them, Honorable Manye, to just note that in many instances, like with these as well, we do not require ministerial approval because when people approach us and we do get this information from taxpayers and tax practitioners, we already do have complaints and we've in many occasions already identified some issues out of it. Now, if I can take just one or two of the issues that you raise, Honorable Manye, for instance, the 80 days to raise disputes with SARS, that ties in with the audit notes available of not being available, and that's the reasons for the assessment. That's not always clear on the letters of findings and when the notices of assessment, as well as the 3 months to deal with disputes. Now, all of that fits into the dispute resolution procedure, which we did a very, very extensive investigation on, and we actually considered more than 500,000 individual disputes, objections, and appeals when we did that report that was issued in 2020, and we are working with SARS to make that more efficient. The biggest problem that we have here is that the timeframes involved that we're talking about, like the 80 days, like the 3 months, those are legislatively prescribed timeframes because it ties in with it's prescribed in the dispute resolution rules. So the moment that there's an assessment is raised, you don't agree with the assessment, you have 80 days to lodge your dispute. It gets worse because after that 80 days, when you lodge your dispute, SARS has 60 days to actually, before you even lodge the dispute, you can do a request for reasons if the letter of the reasons for the assessment was not clear. Then SARS has 45 days to give you those reasons. Then you've got 80 days to lodge your dispute. After that, SARS has 60 days to finalize the objection. If the objection is disallowed, you've got another, at most, 45 days to lodge your appeal. That appeal can go to ADR, which needs to be finalized within 90 days. And we're talking about business days. We're talking about days that exclude public holidays, excludes public weekends, and it also excludes the period between 16 December and 15 January. So when we're talking 90 days, we're not talking 3 months, we're talking much longer than that. And what we found in our dispute resolution investigation is that SARS fails to comply with these timeframes. So even though the timeframes are legislated, on almost every single step of that, SARS fails to keep to the timeframes in many instances. The problem that we find ourselves in is that our mandate is limited so that we are not allowed to review legislation and tax policy. So we cannot get involved in making recommendations to change these timeframes. But we try to hold SARS to account in the instances where they go beyond those timeframes. So for the 80 days, the 3 months that it takes to finalize disputes, as well as the reasons for the assessment, we are actively engaging with SARS in those aspects already. The CMO toll-free number I was not aware of. We can take that up and we will engage SARS on that from a systemic side. I also just want to touch on the pay now, argue later rule as well. The Tax Ombudsman did touch on it. The pay now, argue later rule, yes, it's been confirmed, it's constitutional, it is international best practice. However, in legislation, there is a provision where that pay now, argue later rule can be suspended. And you will note from our annual report that we raised the systemic issue with SARS because those suspension of payment, the SARS's decision on the suspensions of payment lie unattended. But now the legislation does safeguard taxpayers in those instances because SARS is not allowed to take any collection steps from the date that the taxpayer submits that request for suspension up to the point where SARS either declines it or if they granted it previously, they withdrew it. And then there's still a 10-day period where SARS is not allowed to take collection steps. So at the very least, taxpayers are safeguarded in the sense that if they do a request for suspension of payment when they dispute a debt, if SARS does not respond to that request for suspension, they are legally prohibited from taking collection steps. So they are supposed to act quickly. We did have, as the Tax Ombudsman mentioned, a meeting with the deputy commissioners as well last week. In that meeting, they also noted that they've taken a bit of a different approach currently with these requests for suspension of payments. So they are essentially automatically granting those requests for suspension of payment the moment that it's being submitted, and then they will only withdraw it, which the law allows them to do, if they can identify any issue of non-compliance. So there are still some legal issues for them to work around for that. But we've managed to get them to actually automate the request for suspensions of payments as well, because when we started, the problem was that you're dealing with, or SARS deals with two different divisions who deal with suspension of payments. The one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. Those suspensions of payment would go to the auditor who raised the assessment, but the debt management department doing the collections does not know about that suspension. So a couple of years ago, the SARS did make it electronic, the submission of a request for suspension, but we're still not comfortable that they are dealing with those suspensions of payments in time. But at the very least, as I mentioned, we're comfortable that taxpayers are safeguarded. And if SARS takes any collection steps, which has happened in the past, while there is a suspension pending or a suspension in place, we do come in and we get SARS to very quickly withdraw those collection steps. We've even had instances in the past with SARS did third-party appointments when there were suspensions in place, and we managed to get SARS to refund those third-party appointments as well. I think that takes care of the issues relating to systemics that were asked. Thank you very much.
I think over to Talita.
Thank you, Tax Ombudsman. I just want to add to give clarity to what the Tax Ombudsman explained in relation to the question that Honorable Manyi raised about the 98% implementation and 80% in favor of taxpayers, so that we also account to that 20% for members to understand what does it mean. In some of the recommendations that we would make, for example, it would ask SARS to finalize an objection, and if there is a refund, to pay a taxpayer that refund. However, after SARS has finalized an objection, they would indicate that, yes, we have implemented your recommendation. However, the refund that was available, we have offset it to pay the tax debt of a particular period for the same taxpayer. So that's what we mean in some instances when we say SARS has implemented the recommendations of the Tax Ombudsman, but they did not, the resolution was not in favor of a taxpayer. In some instances where SARS would not implement our recommendations, they explain to us, because legislation demands that they give reasons for not implementing our recommendations. Some taxpayers, unfortunately, when SARS ask for additional information to substantiate their claims, some they wouldn't provide such information. And so that's what counts to some of the 20%. And also, it's important for members to realize that we also get complaints that as the Office of the Tax Ombudsman, we would not know that they are fraud related. And once we have assigned them to SARS to investigate, they then explain to us that, Talita, we can't implement this recommendation because a taxpayer was hijacked, their profile was hijacked, for example, and it's a fraud case that is now being investigated by the SARS Fraud Division. And in all these instances, taxpayers are updated with information by SARS and also by the Office of the Tax Ombudsman. The second question that I would like to answer that came from Honorable Manyi also relates to the rejection which Gert tried to also answer. Yes, there is a concern in terms of the number of rejections. However, we have to note that we have seen a slight decrease in a reporting period of the rejected complaints as we do comparatives. That is why when you look at our slide number 13, it indicates the comparison of the rejected, accepted, and terminated complaints year on year. And we have seen that in the reporting period, there is a slight decrease as compared to the previous financial year. What we should also note is that when we reject a complaint to taxpayers, we are aware that not all taxpayers understand the processes that they need to follow within SARS. Hence, some of them, they come prematurely to us. And so when we reject a complaint, we indicate to taxpayers why we are rejecting a complaint and what is it that taxpayers do. Also, we have limitations to our authority, which means these are the type of complaints that the Office of the Tax Ombudsman is prohibited to review. Very often we get taxpayers that come and complain that they are not in agreement with the assessment of an outcome from SARS. And in terms of legislation, we do know that a taxpayer who is aggrieved with an outcome of an assessment, for example, they need to first lodge an objection. And the Tax Ombudsman cannot accept that complaint until a taxpayer has fulfilled that obligation. In terms of complaints, questions that relate to the CMO hotline, there is a toll-free number at SARS Contact Center. And when you phone that number, it gives you options there. And the members need to just click on the correct option. What I need to also indicate is the different other platforms that SARS has introduced that are meant to alleviate pressure from the SARS Contact Center. They have also introduced the SMS line where taxpayers can send an SMS to SARS and request them to call them back. We have also received complaints on that it takes a little bit longer. However, there are people that manage to get through to that. On the SARS website, they also have make an appointment with SARS. And what is good about it, because as a person who works with complaints, I also test them because taxpayers would ask me questions. So I need to relate to them what my experience is. When you go to the website, you can even select, if you are in Gauteng, you can select to be called by a person who's sitting in KZN, and they would ask you to choose a platform that you would want them to contact you with. We know there are hiccups there, but these are some of the innovations that SARS implemented to try and alleviate the inflow that goes into the call centers. I think these are all the complaints that I related to my side of work. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Talita. Pearl?
Thank you, ma'am. let me start with the challenges before I answer to the Honorable Mabiletsa. In terms of awareness, the Office of the Tax Ombudsman does have challenges, and the Tax Ombudsman is aware about that. Our challenges are limited budget in terms of traveling and personnel. Now, when we do our outreach and awareness, most of the time, Team O2O, we will usually take almost half of the office to go, even if they're not part of communications and outreach. But because we work together, we will take other people from other units to go out with us to go and promote awareness. And for other instances, you'll find that we will be invited, let's say in Cape Town or to Eastern Cape or whatever. And because we have only one office in Pretoria, it becomes a challenge to do that awareness like comprehensively. We will pick and choose because of budget constraints and personnel. But let me come to the questions that Honorable Mabiletsa has requested. In terms of face-to-face, yes, for the past years, we've been doing a lot of face-to-face awareness, and we've been going to communities, province by province. And after COVID, then most of the organizations, they preferred visual awareness because of budget and also because they couldn't travel and so forth. But because, like I said, we have one office in Pretoria. So when we do malls activation, and also when we look at where is the tax base, where are the majority of taxpayers? Majority of taxpayers in terms of statistics that we receive from SARS, they're in Gauteng. But as the Tax Ombudsman will say that, Pearl, we need to segment our market and make sure that we reach out to even the last person who's sitting at Lusikisiki, you know. But because of budget, like I said, it becomes a problem. But community radio stations, they come handy for us. In the last 3 years, we've been using a lot of community radio stations, and the community radio stations, you know, at this point in time, they go like, but why don't you put money to us? You can't always get free publicity, which is true. So like I said, budget is a problem. We can't give everybody. When we have money, we use it sparingly. When we launch our educational programs, we try to be in sync with SARS, because SARS will launch their taxes in July, and then we will also say, okay, this is the time for us to also come strong with our awareness and beyond. Now, when we exhibit, like for the last year, when we exhibited in around Gauteng. We didn't go out a lot because of the budget of traveling, and which limited us. But we are lucky to have government departments inviting us to their wellness days or to their outreach, and then we will partner with them, including partnering with RCBs. RCBs are the companies that represent tax practitioners. So we will partner with them. Some instances we are requested to pay for that exhibition, and in other instances it's free. Now, in terms of other exhibitions, we will go to them all. Like the Tax Ombudsman has mentioned that we were at 4 Ways this year already when we launched our campaign, and we intend to go to other areas. So we are going to Eastern Cape this Friday. Every time we go and we are requested to come and present, we also take a team from operations to be able to respond to taxpayers at that point in time. Not to say we will come back to you, because the OTO has the SARS system. So the team at operations are able to respond to taxpayers immediately. So when we go on Friday to Eastern Cape, same thing. We are going there. It's limited resources, but we are saying we will make it. And we are using community radio stations. This time we are using 10 community radio stations to reach all the areas that are around East London. So we try our best to ensure that community radio stations we pay, by the way, in these instances, and we also get free publicity so that we can get a balance. And community radio stations are very, very affordable. So we try our best to use them and to get more collaboration with them. Now, in terms of, I just want to see if I've responded other things. From my point of view, what the Honorable Mawilita was asking is, we would like to say, if you see any opportunities from your side, please do share with us. Then we will see how we can improvise to support that initiative that you have identified. Also, we will also try from our side to share our schedule so that you can see where we are. Like I said, on Friday, we are at East London. We will share with you where we will be in East London. And also next week, we are in Cape Town with partnering with universities. And we partner with universities because we don't have resources to pay for the venue and so forth. We partner with government because at times they have free venues and so forth. Now, if I have to respond to Honorable Mani, Honorable Mani mentioned that why can't you use PR to advise taxpayers on how to lodge a complaint, where to start before you go to the OTO. Yes, most of our content is driven by that, and we get support from our legal services and our operations. They help us with putting content together to ensure that taxpayers knows exactly what to do. Our radio station interviews and everything that we do, it has processes and explaining. We reiterate on explaining how to lodge a complaint, because most of the rejections is because taxpayers don't want to go to SARS. They are so angry, then they come directly to the office, and you find that their matter is not compelling and they have not followed process. So we have a lot of those, Honorable Mani, and we are going to take your advice to make sure that we stress that fact of the process, because it is frustrating. Then you find that the taxpayers say we don't have teeth, you are useless. But if you have listened to what the tax ombudsman has said, that more than 80% of complaints have been in favor of taxpayers. And it's because that we try our best to ensure that through the communication, that point of the process is reiterated more. Coming back to Honorable Nokolo Abraham, the question of awareness is, yes, it's very important. And I think that Tax Ombudsman, like I said, she always says, Pearl, segmentation is very important. Even the normal vendor who's sitting there is a taxpayer. She usually says that to me. Yes, we are aware that we have to reach to vendors. And the CEO did mention that when you go to the township, you find that those people at the township, they actually want SARS. They don't want us, because they have the issues that they have with SARS is the level is they are not able to comprehend the text, and they don't understand what is this SMS that they receive from SARS. So most of the time when we're in a township, we have to deal with SARS issues than with the Ombudsman issues. But like we say, that it's very important that we just create awareness that, yes, even if SARS doesn't give you enough education, but we are there when they frustrate you. So it's just to ensure that our awareness is broad to the vendors. And also we try our best to give leaflets about the office in different languages as well to the people on the street. If we go to East London, we also take our language, our pamphlets in different languages, so that we balance the understanding of and the comprehension for taxpayers to understand our offices. Now, in terms of Umklobo and Ukos, I think the tax ombudsman she must be laughing in her office, because when I presented the schedule, she said, "Pen, where is it Ukozi? Where is it Umklobo?" And I laughed when the Honorable mentioned that. So Ukozi and Umklobo, they are one of the highest radio stations and very expensive. And when we use them, we can only use them for a week. And you find that when we use them for a week, then after 2 months, the people who never listened to that week radio ad or the conversation, they have missed out. Now, because of budget limitations, we are not able to have consistency and the continuation in our awareness. We come in June on Ukozu or on Umklobo, then we are gone. Then we'll be coming again in November when maybe they have more, we are given more budget, or in the new financial year, and then those people, they've already forgotten about us. But like I said, that with the advice from the Tax Ombudsman, yes, this month of October, we will be using Ukhozi to promote our office. Like I said, it's our anniversary, so we need to make sure that majority of taxpayers knows our process. And also, if you look at our annual report, so because we use media releases and our publications, you find that the Ukhozi, and our Metro FM, they don't want to interview us if we are seeking for free publicity, because they want money. And they even put it on our email to say, why can't you put money? We can't just give you a free publicity. So they are very strict because they know that they have highest listenership. I just want to check, but saying that, Honorable Abraham, we will try our best to look at how much to improve this outreach and create awareness. Also from your side, Honorable Abrahams, if you have more some initiatives that you know from your side in the area that you reside on, please let us know in advance so that we can see how best we can reach out to the people as far as Mthatha, Aliwal North, and so forth. I think that's all from my side, and thank you.
Thank you, Pearl. I think the last one is Mamelayo, whereby we have to answer the issue regarding not reaching the outcome on disability. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tax Ombudsman. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I agree with Honorable Mabitsela with regards to people with disabilities. So this is our goal, because as an office, we have a goal that actually also speaks to that a diverse workforce can also, help us to have increased productivity, and so employees can learn from each other also, and experience with different experiences and skills. And we, in the year 2022-2023, we actually joined the employment equity. I think the last part of the year, we joined the employment equity and skills development committee to actually assist us to actually also get ready as an organization, or what kind of health and safety measures we need to put in place, what kind of tools we need to put in place as a work area, and also to make sure that they assist us to guide us on recruitment processes that we can utilize to attract more people with disabilities. It's very important to us, and that's why we report on it, and we don't actually hide it. It's something that we look into. So we have a representative we've put a representative on an employment equity and skill development committee that actually we learn from others where to actually go and where to attract people with disabilities, but at the same time, not just recruit them, make sure that we've got the health and safety measures in place, and also the tools of work in place. So yes, we will work harder with that. What's great is that we also, before we do a recruitment, we will also sensitize the senior management on what type of employment equity is required, which areas are lacking, and we will keep on actually doing that. It's very important to us, and it's one of our goals. I do also agree with Honorable Mabitsela. I think Honorable Mabitsela and Honorable Abraham, when we spoke about also looking into recruitment delays and where is these recruitment delays. I just want to highlight that the Tax Ombudsman is only 10 years old, and it started with only 3 employees, and now it's on almost 43 employees. And reason being is that whilst we were growing so fast, we actually have to understand that a Tax Ombudsman employee is a highly skilled, and I have to say a highly skilled employee, especially on the complaints resolution side. It comes with a lot of demands because of the fact that the person must know all tax types and all SARS's administration processes, and whilst keeping up to date with the changes in legislation and legislation regarding taxes and administration. So this also assists, makes it a little bit of a barrier with regards to when you get a person, they're probably skilled in one area or not skilled in another area. So what senior management has done so perfectly and greatly is actually look into, sometimes they would say, maybe instead of actually going for this post this way in terms of recruitment, we would rather get a graduate. So the graduate program has worked amazing for us also, because then we get these graduates, when we expose them to both sides of SARS, how SARS work, how O2O works. So we have modeled our own tax ombud employee at the same time, instead of, you'll find that most people will come from SARS, but also some people would be like one-sided. So we tried our best to actually, start from the ground up. So you'd find that sometimes we park a vacancy and we would actually go for recruitment, for another recruitment process, which will include graduates with a view of one day absorbing, of course, these graduates, so that we are able to also have our own modeled employee of the tax ombud that's perfect, that knows all the tax types, all tax administration, and they really do well when they are in the organization. And another instance is because we try to do less with more and incorporate technology. As SARS is growing quickly with their technology and modernization, we'd find ourselves, as I've said before, behind with regards to how we actually work. We'd find that with some areas of ours is still a lot manual. So we're trying also our best to make sure that we incorporate new technologies, or we introduce new technologies also, not only for the citizenry, because we think that, yes, it's important that the citizen is able to access our office wherever they are, whatever time they are, with whatever device they've got, and also get feedback from our office in terms of service delivery, but also with our staff in how we actually can free them from manual processes so that they can concentrate on other areas. Like our senior manager in communications has said, not only do we only use, we collaborate, so we don't work in silos. You'd find that we will require staff to assist in communications and stakeholder engagement, so that the taxpayers have a knowledgeable person there who can assist them on the spot. And also we try to make sure that at the office their work continues at the same time. So the technology would take care of some of the administrative, or rather what we call manual work, and so that we are able to use the time of the operation or the specialists or people around the office is seamless, and we are able to capture and catch on with some of the modernizations that has happened at SARS, which were happened rapidly and fast, but at the same time, so we think that we can leapfrog and also make sure that we make sure that we become efficient. As I have alluded to the honorable members, that yes, there were vacancies at the end of the financial year, and majority of those vacancies were completed and filled. And we have also some of them, we have introduced the graduate program, as I said, in the beginning of this financial year of 23-24. I think that's all the questions that you got for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Team OTO. Thank you, honorable members. I think we've answered all the questions, but I must say that coming to observations of Honorable Manyi, with regard to the opening remarks, I think the recording will assist because the notes were handwritten. And another thing whereby he said the growth of the office is bad news because SARS must be doing the work. I think that's what we always reiterate on our public engagement, that if the tax administration system is so good, you do not need the Office of the Tax Ombuds. And that is what South Africa should be aiming at. However, we see that even the first country that introduced ombudsman, because ombudsman is a Swedish word, and the Sweden has got 98% literacy rate, still has got the Office of the Ombuds. So this implies that it maybe is difficult for a country to reach that 100% maximum whereby taxpayers do not have complaints. But all in all, thank you. I don't know if there are any other comments that we need to respond to. Over to you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Manyi. Follow-up question?
Yeah, Thank you very much, Chairperson. Firstly, let me welcome the responses. I must say they are all professional. I'm happy with all the responses. So the questions I'm going to ask now take us forward based on the responses that we've had. I must really, once again, appreciate the responses. I think all the people that spoke very well, and they spoke to the issues. They did not avoid the issues, all of them. So I must thank them for that. But number one, I think I'm nervous that sitting where I'm sitting, maybe I'm wrong, but sitting where I'm sitting, I'm sensing some kind of a defeatist posture from the OTO. Now, why am I saying this? And in fact, I've got 5 follow-up points. The first one is that a minister is by nature a biased politician. A minister is somebody that is vulnerable to bribes. This is fact. We've seen this in the Zondo Commission. They had all kinds of things done for them by Busasa and all of that. Now, to take an office so important as the Ombuds office, and you make it subject, we make its independence on anything subject to a person like a politician. What do you think are doing? Why is that not an issue to be challenged? I really have a serious problem with the fact that an ombuds office should depend on the minister's discretion on anything, given the profile of this human being called a minister. I really don't think this is right. It's just wrong. The optics are wrong. The morality of it is wrong, and all of it, you know. And also, chances are that anybody, the lowest paid person in the ombuds office is a highly paid, is a professional. So why do we have people that are so proficient and an office that is a professional office is subject to us with overalls and all of that? I really don't think it's right. But more than anything else, the issue of bias, the issue of vulnerable to bribes, for me, rules out a politician as somebody that can have a final say on what is it that the Ombudsman needs to do in terms of reviewing some of the processes that are frustrating the taxpayer. So, first issue is that one. That do you think that don't you think that this is an issue to be raised? OTO, don't you think we should challenge that? Why are you defeated by this? Why are you accepting this because you found it like this? I have a problem with that. So I'm encouraging you to challenge it. And if not, why not? Number one. Number two, I think Ms. Malakalaka made very good points about the sophistication of the people in the OTO, and also the fact that the OTO has got, call it a helicopter view. Now, if you have such highly skilled, highly trained individuals with such a helicopter view, why are such individuals not allowed to make recommendations in terms of laws that are frustrating the taxpayer? It's not making sense to me. These are the best people you have that have got all the wheels and bells in terms of qualifications for tax laws and all of this. And for some reason, which stupid law is this? That is, it is a stupid law if it's a law that is preventing such highly skilled people from making recommendations to say, this is better. It's almost like we have a law that says, no, an engineer can't decide that this car must be high octane petrol, it must be diesel, although diesel is not producing the particular level of energy required. And then you say a person best placed to make this recommendation must not make this recommendation, must deal with something else. It's not making sense. So again, this is this defeatist posture that I'm sensing. Why are we allowing this thing to happen? What needs to happen for this thing to change? Because it's wrong, as it were. So that's the second point. Why are we not allowing the tax ombuds to make? I mean, you've got nothing to gain You are there as tax ombuds to make sure that the taxpayer gets the fair end of the thing. So why is it that you are not allowed to make a recommendation to improve the system? You're not ripping off SARS. You're just saying this is fair game. So why are you disallowed from doing this? I have a problem with that. Thirdly, I have a problem with the issue of what I would characterize as legislated bullying, where was it Honorable Asha Sarupen that raised this issue as well? This pay now, argue later. And Mr. Van Heerden raised, and I was happy with the articulation, and it showed that he actually is a technocrat that understands all these processes. I didn't tell Mr. Van Heerden anything that he didn't already know, but this looks like his hands are tied. You know, he articulated very well this issue around 21 days request for reasons, followed by 80 days process, followed by 60 days response, followed by 40. I mean, what is all this bureaucracy, as it were? And in that process, we now hear that, and I'm happy with the clarification of the 98%. So now we know that 80% of the time, put differently, SARS is wrong. Because if the dispute resolution outcome is that 80% of the instances, it's in favor of the taxpayer who would have complained that I'm being given the short end of the stick, and the ombuds intervenes, and 80% of the time, the ombuds intervention results in favor of the taxpayer. So put differently, SARS has been wrong 80% of the time. Yet you have to pay first and argue later. This does not strike me as fair and just. Why is it that we can't have a system where during this 21, 80, 60, 45-day period, then because we know that we've got it on record now that SARS 80% of the time can be wrong. Why is it then that you have to pay here now and argue later when the person they're arguing with is 80% of the time incorrect in the thing? Why are we not dealing with that and suspend? I'm not saying it mustn't be paid. Suspend the due to be paid up until the thing is resolved. So why are you forced to pay, especially when somebody is going to be wrong as proven 80% of the time? Fourth point is the issue of consequence management. Now that we know that 80% of the time SARS is wrong, what are the consequence management? What happens to those officials that have done these assessments, and thanks to the ombudsman, now they are wrong? 80% of the time they are wrong. These people, what happens to them? Is it just, okay, bad luck, sorry, okay, and all of that, and then the life goes on? What happens to those people? So I'm not hearing anything about consequence management. I think 80% as a wrong rate, as a SARS wrong rate, 80%. Because if you say tax ombudsman in favor of the taxpayer is 80% successful in favor of the taxpayer, the opposite is also true. That it means 80% of the time in this dispute, SARS has been proved to be wrong and all of that. So what happens to those officials that have been doing these wrong assessments? Lastly, the issue of not binding. I'm happy that the OTO is also uncomfortable with this, but I'm not, she said it, but maybe I didn't hear. If I can just get another second bite in terms of the response to this, in terms of the binding issue, what is it that you are doing as OTO to make your recommendations binding? Because I mean, as you say, that even in well-developed countries, we have this office. So it means there's always a need for this office to exist. And SARS is by nature a very, very powerful institution. And therefore, to fight SARS is an unwinnable task. Now, if you've got a public protector by way of, I think an ombudsman is a public protector of sorts. Now, if you've got a public protector by way of a tax ombuds, why is it that you don't have the same power as the other public protector has, that even if you are wrong, then you must be reviewed in court if you are wrong? But why aren't your recommendations binding? I mean, we can't rely on the we can't rely on good faith, good relationship, and all of this that you've been 98% has been successful, has been what you call it, implemented, and all of that. We just lucky that at the point in time we've got the right people in both sides of the equation. What happens if in the next 10 years we get some other reactionary individuals on both sides of the equation? Then we have a problem. So I think we need something sustainable. We can't depend on the hearts and the minds. We've got to have something concrete that is legislated, that is firm and sustainable. So I'm therefore, even as I ask this question, I'm also making a recommendation that you should strong recommendation that you should consider making your recommendations binding. Those are the 5 key issues from my side, Chair. Thank you.
Of course. Who else? Okay, that's the follow-up from Honorable Maya. I don't see any other member raising their hand. Let me take it back to the OTO to respond to those questions, and then we move towards closing the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Honorable Mani, for the questions you are raising, because we can only be better if Parliament asks questions like this. With regard to the independence of the OTO, even though the OTO reports to the Minister of Finance in terms of the TAR, however, the OTO enjoys functional independence in that both SARS and the Minister of Finance cannot interfere with the decision process and decision-making of the OTO. We receive complaints. I think Talita is going to come in and help. We receive complaints from the taxpayers. We do our own investigation. We do our own recommendations without us wanting anything or any yes or no from the Minister of Finance, from SARS. So we still enjoy functional independence. And I think that's what we normally say, even during our workshops, that yes, there's an issue regarding structural independence, which is about optics, HR, like its support function. But with regard to our main functions and the main mandate, we still enjoy functional independence. With regard to the recommendations regarding the changing of the legislation, at least it's a good thing that I've worked at Treasury and I was busy with the changes in the tax legislation and drafting of the tax amendments and presenting it to this committee. Treasury has a process and no one is closed in making recommendations regarding the changing to the legislation. But as I would say at Treasury, you can make your own recommendations, but the minister makes the final decision of the cabinet regarding which changes can be included in the budget and later amended in the TLAB. So their office, we do make recommendations. As I've said earlier, that when I was still at Treasury in 2017, we made a lot of changes in the legislation dealing with the Office of the Tax Ombuds, whereby we made a legislative amendment for the Office of the Tax Ombuds for the budget to be ring-fenced from SARS. We made a legislative amendment for the Office of the Tax Ombuds in terms of Section 15 of the Tax Administration Act to employ its own staff. And we made legislative amendment regarding the Tax Ombuds conducting its own systematic reviews regarding that it should be proactive. So we do that. And then on the issue regarding the pay now, argue later, we have, as I've said, that we have a judgment, which is the Medcash case, but as Gert has articulated that at least there is a limit to the impact of pay now, argue later, in that the taxpayer can request for a suspension of payment. And if the taxpayer has requested a suspension of payment, this implies that SARS cannot take the taxpayer's money. But as I've said, Gert and Talita will come in. With regard to the consequence management, I think that when SARS is doing the annual report, I think it's next week, then those are the questions that you can pose to SARS, because it is SARS that can invoke consequence management based on those issues, maybe if there was failure to act or a grave mistake. With regard to the recommendations not binding, unfortunately, we cannot be compared to the public protector in the establishment, because the public protector is the Chapter 9 institution. Our office is not a Chapter 9 institution. So there is something regarding the Chapter 9 institution of the Constitution and all the benefits that it may have. And all the ombuds offices in the country are not Chapter 9 offices. What is important is that even though we are not Chapter 9 institutions, but the pension funds adjudicator, which is also an ombuds, their recommendations are binding. But when we do our research, we find out that all over the world, the recommendations are mostly binding if the Office of the Ombuds is making recommendations to the private sector, because the pension fund adjudicator will normally make recommendations to the financial institutions, that is pension funds or provident funds. You know, there was that case with just the pension funds adjudicator won the last one in the Constitutional Court. So what I'm trying to say that we've done that research, and then most of the recommendation in other countries also, you find that it is binding if it's against the private sector, that is the financial institution on that. For example, the finance ombuds, maybe the ombuds against the insurance industry may be binding because it's the private sector. But in this regard, our recommendations against SARS, of which SARS is government, maybe that is the issue. But I'm happy that you are raising this, because you're not the first one to raise. It makes us to think that we need to make recommendations for the changes to be made in the legislation in this regard. And thank you for all the accolades regarding the good work that we are doing. Even all over Africa, we are getting invitation. For example, Tanzania came to us end of July, beginning of August, because they wanted to see how Africa has established the Office of the Tax Ombuds. And then they came to us so that for a site visit and a study visit. And yesterday we received a call from Nigeria, because they want to open an office of this nature. And South Africa, they take South Africa as a benchmark, because our office has been in existence for 10 years. And I want to reiterate that we can never be good without your comments and your criticism, because they make us to grow. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Oh, I thought you were referring to your colleague to respond to questions.
Yes, I don't know whether Ms. Honorable Mani is satisfied, or do you want Harit and Talita to come in?
I see Honorable Mani.
Yeah, Chair. maybe just okay. I note I'm happy with the responses, except for one, because my understanding of the issue of reviews, there was a point mentioned in the presentation about this kind of review requires ministerial approval. That's where I'm coming in, and that for me I would regard as a functional issue, despite the fact that the O2 is saying no. Functionally, there are no interruptions. It is an interruption in my view. If, as part of exercising your duty as OTO, you require particular permission from a minister to do systematic reviews of the processes of SARS, that is the issue for me. Why do you need that? And as I've explained, that a minister is by definition a biased politician. Why do you need a biased politician to sign off on systematic reviews, unless I've understood it incorrectly? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. If I can come in, Honorable Mani. Systemic review, it's a proactive nature. But the view was that when we made those changes to the legislation, there's something called phishing exercise. Even in tax treaties, when you request for exchange of information, let's say we have a tax treaty with the UK, and then you just say, I want information regarding this taxpayer without saying why you require that information. The other country can reject that request and say it's a phishing expedition. The reason why we had that caveat in the law to say that when the tax ombud is being proactive and conduct systemic reviews, once they've done their preliminary query, then they should get approval of continuing with that review from the Minister of Finance. I was at Treasury when we made those changes. And the rationale that we put forward was that we want to avoid a phishing expedition whereby there may be no rationale for the Office of the Tax Ombuds to continue with the systemic review. However, we take note of your recommendations and your concerns, and then we can take them forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Honorable Manya is raising a hand, or you are giving a thumbs up?
No, I'm saying thumbs up, Chair. I'm happy with the final point that the Ombudsman is making to say they will look into these matters. I know that she doesn't want to make binding commitments here, but I think she has understood my issue, and I think they'll find a way to deal with it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, honorable members, for that session of engagement with the OTO. I think certain things can be done by us as lawmakers. It will be difficult for the OTO to say, I want to be independent. Of course, they are independent. Financially, they must have their own bank account, control their own fees, and not be treated like preschool children. If they want to go and buy cold drink at mainly mall, they must first call SARS to give them petty cash. We once discussed this matter. I think it was the last meeting we had with Justice Mwepe in Cape Town, if you remember. He raised this issue very sharply. And if I'm not mistaken, we have taken a resolution in that regard. So I'll request Alan and Tebuko to go back to the minutes of that meeting that we had with Justice Mwepe on the issue of OTO to even in terms of human resource and a whole range of other issues be given administrative autonomy. So that they should not on everything go to SARS. As I'm saying that we'll have to look at the minutes of that day. But I remember us recommending something to the minister to that effect. Be that as it may, I think there's a strong feeling from members that as much as in terms of decision making and so on, and the status of the office, the OTO is independent. We are going further to say that including issues of human resource and other related matters, so that they are not hamstrung by SARS. So they should be able to do things on their own. Because if you have got a CEO is an accounting officer. So you can't just be a CEO who can do certain things. You are not like other CEOs. It's like you are a ceremonial CEO. So we don't see any reason why certain things which are done for them by SARS, they can't do them on their own. So let's go back to those minutes so that we ourselves as legislators, we engage the minister about this issue because it needs him. I think next week or that other week, we are meeting Treasury for them to present their annual report. This might be one of the other issues that we can pick up in that meeting. In terms of reaching out or outreach programs, while we're having engagement now, I went into the social media and I realized that the OTO has got a Facebook account. I requested to be the friend. I'm now following them. They also have an Instagram account. I requested to be the friend. I'm there now. So I'll be following them on those social media platforms. Remember, social media is a very powerful tool today, more especially to the younger generations. They hardly listen to radio stations. They are in the social media space, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and many other social media platforms. And I'm happy that I saw the OTO in that space. I am not sure if they are also on Twitter. And also look at engaging through community radio stations. Community radio stations, I think collectively have got 6 million or so followers. Honorable Manye should know better because he's the DG of was the DG of communications in South Africa. He has been very instrumental on GCIS and community radio stations. They are very powerful collectively. And advertising through community radio stations is much cheaper than the mainstream Ukozi, Metro, and so on and so on. And the same applies with community newspapers. I see MD, what do they call it? Honorable Mind, that agency in the president or GCI,
DDA.
Yes, MDDA. You established the MDDA yourself. MDDA provides funding to community newspapers and also gives support to community radio stations. And there's a lot of money that comes from community, GCIS in that regard to those platforms. And many people are found there. Like when I'm home this side in Limpopo, I know many people listen to Diani community radio stations, Sukuseso radio stations, and many other community radio stations that are very prominent in my area. So let's look at those platforms and follow people where they are. We should not always be conventional and think all people are in SABC. No, the world is moving faster. So the section on communication, on marketing and branding should look at that and then see if you can maximize your outreach, because traveling to be all over physically is very expensive with the limited budget that you have. Flights are no longer cheaper. You can see the price of fuel is going up every day, and it impacts. If you have to go to East London, how much do you pay going to East London? So these platforms that you can look at to maximize your access to the public, they understand and know you much better wherever you are. Thanks very much, honorable members, and let's also thank the OTO, Yanga, who's the new in the office, and we have already wished her all the best and the capable staff of the OTO under very difficult circumstances, more especially with financial constraints. They are doing exceptionally well, according to me, and we must commend the hard-working staff of the OTO. And as I've said, let's go back as a committee and look at the decisions that we took when we were still with the former Ombuds, Justice Mwete, and see how we can strengthen this office. Thanks very much, colleagues. The meeting is adjourned until we meet again next week, Tuesday. Akensa. Enkosi.
Siyabonga, Chair.
Ralebo Chair.
Ngiyalibua, rolibua. Noxie.
Hi, Jojo.
Wamona uyanga imphethe right le office yaka OTO.
Yeah. Hi, Sana. If that's a better life, him transforming. I'm resistant, Papa. It's a good she just wanted some wings to fly.
Yeah, now I will write.
She's flying now. She's flying.
Jojo, zobonana next week in Parliament.
Sharp, Jojo. Don't.
Recording stopped.